All right. Apparently, I am live. Um, actually, the show. Let's give it a second. Am I live? Can somebody hear me right now? By my accounts, everything is working just fine. I can see myself. I have my microphone. Can somebody confirm that you can hear me? Okay. Well, there you go, Stephen. Hey, nice to join. Thanks for joining, Stephen. I hope things are going well for you. All right, folks. I just wanted to do a brief update on this recent, well, not recent. This trip was back in August. For the last couple of years, I've been doing annually. I do at least one big 10-day trip somewhere. Several years ago, I did the South Esk area with Evan, Chef Evan. Last year, or the year before that, or the year after that, we did a loop in the what I call sort of the front range of Banff, where we went to Devon Lakes and that area. Last year, the long trip for us was up in Wilmore Wilderness, and then this year's trip was in the White Goat Wilderness, Bighorn area. The Bighorn area. Hey, Davey, how's it going? Hope things are good in Winnipeg. The Bighorn area is an area that's gaining a lot of popularity in the last couple of years. As people have discovered the national parks and do all the popular hikes in Jasper and in Banff, then it's only natural that people are trying to find other areas to hike in. That's one reason. The reason people are moving away from the parks because the reservation system is a big mess and it's frustrating. So people are trying to go into the Crown land, the public land use zones, and going into those areas. So the White Goat area, the Cline, is very popular. When you talk about the Cline, we're referring to the area east. The trailhead is generally east of Saskatchewan Crossing and west of Nordegg, and it's popular hikes in that area include Landslide Lake, Lake of the Falls. It's a good, the Cline parking lot is a good starting point to get to Pinto Lake. And then nearby, there's Kinglet Lake, Alston Lakes, a lot of popular areas. But tucked right there, right next to the Cline River parking lot, is the Coral Creek parking lot. And not a lot of people go into that area for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that to go into the Cline, you're almost always going in and coming out, and Coral Creek is a really good example of that. I mean, to follow Coral Creek, first of all, it's a tedious trail because it's always, you're always fording the creek. And so to go into the Cline area via Coral Creek, you're going in 2 days and then you're backtracking because there's not a lot of easy loops. And so that was one of the things that my buddies, so the people who joined me on this hike were JT, Jeff, and myself. And we wanted to explore the area, and we wanted to find a way to try and do a loop. Now, and we had been playing in this area, but I'm going to show you. Earlier this year, I made a video on this map. I think it's showing upside down for you guys right now, but this is a map that Fording River put out. A gentleman by the name of Zenick out of British Columbia, and Zenick put out this map, and the timing on that map was fantastic, and the map is extremely accurate. And so that map ended up being the basis for our hike, as well as some intel that we got on previous years from another friend named James Taves. So thanks to James. And to Zenick. So the trail we did, so what we were trying to do, what the objective of this hike this year was to do a big loop somewhere in the Cline. And buddy JT came up with this loop. And originally the loop we were going to do, we were going to basically just go straight up the Coral Creek, go over Coral Pass, and then come down on the other side and follow Job Creek, and then follow the Brazeau as much as possible, jump across the Brazeau onto the Jasper side, continue down the Brazeau towards Cline Pass, and then come over Cline Pass, and then loop around to Saturday Lake, or I think they're called Saturday Lakes, or I can't remember the lakes around there, but there's little lakes. And then we're going to come down McDonald Creek, then follow the Cline River again, and then finish where we started. So, you know, I'm calling it a super loop. Now, before we started out, we modified that super loop a little bit. So rather than go over Coral Pass, we decided, or sorry, rather than go over Joe Pass, we went over up following Coral Creek towards its headwaters to Coral Lakes, and then we jumped over a couple of incredible passes, Gray Pass and Red Pass, and then that brought us back down towards Joe Blake. So we really wanted to see Joe Blake. Anyway, so when we set out, we changed the itinerary of our hike. Now, once we got going, we had given ourselves numerous options along the way, because we recognized that we were going to have, you know, creeks to ford, especially the Brazeau and things like that. So we gave ourselves a bunch of options. Anyways, what did we end up doing in the end? In the end, we did a loop that got us started at the Cline Trailhead, or the Coral Creek Trailhead. We followed Coral Creek up for our first day, and that required fording Coral Creek, you know, literally 20 times. And at the end of our first day, we ended up at a place called Crow Campsite, just along Coral Creek. So nothing too fancy about day one, following Coral Creek. On day two, we followed a little bit further up Coral Creek, and then we turned west and followed Coral Creek up to its headwaters to Coral Lake. And just before we turned up that valley, you saw in the videos, we saw horses. So we came across an outfitter. There's an outfitter out of Nordegg, and they base camp in that part of the world, and they take out tourists land by helicopter to their camp, and then they take them for rides. So we saw the outfitters, but I didn't show the outfitter in the video. And I'll come back to some of the reasons why there's not a lot of footage. Anyways, we went up Coral Creek to Coral Lakes. Coral Lakes are gorgeous. Had a little lunch there, and then, you know, in the video I showed how we went over a ridge, and I laid out some trails, some red trails on pictures, so you guys can see how we got that. We went over the ridge, and then we got across this big giant moraine field, these big boulder fields that led us to Gray Pass, which was absolutely spectacular. So Gray Pass is at about 2,375 meters, not the highest pass in the Rockies, but it's a significant pass. You know, anything over 2,400 meters is significant. And then from Gray, we went down and ended up in this absolutely amazing, I call it a basin. I don't know what the official name of it is, but we were in this basin with just a little creek going by and walls of mountains all around us. So our campsite on day two was absolutely gorgeous. Day three was one of the most challenging, difficult days I've had in a long time. So from that basin, we went down, followed the creek that outlets that basin, scrambled down alongside this waterfall, and then turned our attention westwards, and then, you know, started climbing, went up to this absolutely gorgeous lake, had lunch at the lake, and then skirted around the lake. At the other end of the lake, there was a big moraine. We went over that moraine and then came out onto another small basin, and then we had this big wall. We climbed the wall. That's where we saw the sheep. And then once we got on top of the wall, there was still another kilometers to go, and more climbing, which culminated in a place called Red Pass. And Red Pass at I took it on my GPS at 2,850 meters is the highest pass that I've ever traversed in the Rockies. I know that Abbott Pass on the Alberta BC border is technically a little bit higher. It's like 2,900 meters, 2,925. But to go to Abbott Pass and to the hut is like technical climbing for very advanced people. It's not something you would just scramble and go do. whereas Red Pass was absolutely like stunning and so high, so incredibly high that in every direction around from where we were at Red Pass, we couldn't see trees. There was just other summits and just amazing rocks and mountains and scenery that's hard to describe. And then and we got to that pass midday, and then we still had a big day, a half a day ahead of us going down. And then heading down from Red Pass, you hit a couple of small lakes. You hit Job Lake. Sorry, you hit Samson Lake and Leah Lake. And Samson and Leah are two guides, famous guides from 100 years ago. They're Stoney Nation, First Nation. Samson was a guide who took Mary Vaux and Mary Schaefer and people like that into the Rockies. And Samson's father was Job Beaver. So after Samson and Leah Lake, the next lake is Job Lake. So we had to go down like all that huge elevation, that 2,900 meters that we were at. We had to lose it all over a very short distance, like 6-7 kilometers of steep descents, some tricky scrambling. But again, the maps provided by Zenick and the intel we had from our buddy James helped us a lot there. And so we ended up at Job Lake on night 3. And then day 4 was short for us. We only went a couple of kilometers and ended up at a friend's cabin. So I happen to know somebody who has the rights to trap in that part of the world. So he lent us the keys to his cabin. So we took a 0 day at the cabin. And then we exited that valley and reconnected with I can't remember the name of the creek, but we ended up going further north and followed a creek that dumped into the Brazeau. So we got at the confluence of that creek in the Brazeau near Whisker Creek. We stayed by an old patrol cabin there. And that was our first glimpse at the Brazeau. And we didn't know if seeing the Brazeau, all along, we didn't know if we'd be able to cross the Brazeau. People we talked to said that in August, we'd probably be able to. To be honest, our first glimpse of the Brazeau at that spot looked pretty intimidating. So we thought we might have to just backtrack, but we decided to commit ourselves and keep going and following the Brazeau. So we spent the next day hiking along the Brazeau, a boring section of trail, which is basically a cut line on the east side of the Brazeau, and went and camped on our night. What night am I here? This is night 6. And as we were, getting further upstream on the Brazeau, it became apparent that it was, thinning out a little bit. So on the morning of day 7, we found a spot along the Brazeau where we felt comfortable enough to cross the Brazeau. So we crossed the Brazeau into Jasper National Park. And that crossed us into Jasper. And what we had to do then is bushwhack and intersect the south boundary trail, which we did. And then we followed the south boundary trail to Brazeau River, or to the Brazeau campground, and then headed south and west towards 4 Points campground, or Boulder, those campgrounds, if you guys know those. And then we recrossed the Brazeau again and stayed at Cline horse campsite. And by the way, Cline is an interesting option because I'm reading a comment here by Curtis. What kind of stuff were you looking for that told you it was a good crossing point? Well, actually, what you're looking for at that point is, Curtis, is we were looking for a place where the Brazeau flows hard in that part of the world. So what we were looking for was an area where the Brazeau was wide, braided, meaning that it was wide and had little islands in the middle of it. And we wanted it braided and wide and shallower, and it was fast, but at least it was shallow. So we ended up finding a place where the water was actually where the first channel was not too bad. The second channel was water right up to our waist, over our waist. So that was pushing us hard, but the distance that we had to cross was on the other side was only about, let's say, 15 meters. And what we ended up doing is pushing up current, and then you kind of walk fast and let the current a little bit push you. We knew at that point that if we fell in, you'd at least float and be able to get yourself out. So I'm looking for a place when I'm fording a river like that. It's got to be wide, fairly shallow, not, anything above your waist can't have that much current, otherwise it's going to push you. But more importantly is the other shore. You have to anticipate, you have to assume that the worst is going to happen, that you're going to fall into the water and you might end up swimming, and you need a place where you can pull yourself ashore. So you don't want cliffs or a steep edge. So we were kind of on a marshy side on the other side. So it worked out good. Then had to bushwhack and found the trail. Back to what I was saying about the Cline. Keep the Cline in mind. So very popular trail, so once day 8 got us basically into Jasper National Park on the Brazeau Loop, on a section of the Brazeau Loop. And the Brazeau Loop is extremely popular, and people are always trying to book 4 Points or Boulder and then do the loop and come back to 4 Points or Boulder. Let me tell you, there is a campsite on the other side of the river called the Cline, the old horse campground, which is perfectly suitable for that. So if you're ever doing the Brazeau Loop and you can't get Boulder or 4 Point, consider that campsite. There's also a campsite on the other side of the river further up. Anyways, I'm getting off topic, but Cline was a really nice campsite. So then the morning of day 8 was a bit of a tedious jaunt. So from Cline, from the Cline campsite, then we climbed up to Cline Pass, and that was bushwhacking, that was trail finding, overgrown, not easy. Then we got over Cline Pass and then back down and intersected Cataract Creek. And then once we're on Cataract Creek, we're in what I would call familiar territory. You follow Cataract Creek to the outlet of the Cline River, and then back out. So that was the loop. 9 days, 9 nights, 10 days. We had food for 10 nights. In essence, we probably have more. People ask how much food we had. None of us had more than 15 pounds of food. So my budget on a normal hike is about 2 pounds a day. On an extremely long hike like this, or a long hike like this, I drop it down to about 1.5 pounds a day. So we're a little bit calorie deficient. 1.5 pounds a day, you're going to eat about 1,800 to 2,000 calories. But you're burning, 4,000 plus. Everybody on our crew has a Garmin watch or a Fitbit that tells us our calories. So we are calorie deficient. We're not replenishing our calories every day, but it's not that long that, it's not going to, we don't suffer for it. The weather, and then so 15 pounds of food, and then the other stuff, a base weight of about 20 pounds otherwise, with the gear and the bear spray and the camera gear and everything else. So all of us were under 40 pounds. I think we're all in the 38, 39 pound range on day 1. With modern packs, the load carries easily, and didn't find it hard. The elevation gain was definitely on day 2. Day 2 and day 3, and after that, moderate ups and downs. The trail in a lot of sections is in very poor shape. That area that deep, about 50% of the trail we were on was seldom visited, like very seldom visited. You don't see a lot of evidence of humans having been there. It's too far. Most people want a loop. Like I said, we were trying to find a loop. Otherwise, to just go into Red Pass and come back out would take you, 4 days, 5 days. And it's not quote unquote rewarding for people. So they're not going to go to those areas. Other than the horse outfitter, there's not a lot of horses, people taking their horses in there. And then when you're crossing in and out of the White Goat, the White Goat is an extremely protected area. The White Goat is actually more protected than Jasper National Park, I would say, because the White Goat is the area, once we crossed away from Jasper and going through Cline Pass, like Cline Pass is in the White Goat. The White Goat has no horses, no fires, no hunting, no fishing, nothing. So it's extremely protected. So the only way to get into the White Goat is on foot, and therefore there's the trails are overgrown. I'm just going to read some comments here. Jacques Vero, how many kilometers did you walk every day, and how many kilometers was your hike total? The hike total was 190 kilometers. So the average was about, it's 190 kilometers on 9 nights, 10 days. So the longest days were 22, 23 kilometers, 24. And then some of the shorter days were 15, 18. We had one we had to stretch a couple of long days because we had one really short day, which was only 4 kilometers. But there's some sections like remarkably, once we got to the Cline Pass on day 7, the next 45 kilometers were all downhill, and you feel it. I mean, it's just going downhill. So, and yeah, you get in shape. I mean, you get your legs when you're doing this, and doing this in August for us, like for me, that was about, I think by the time August rolls around, I'd probably done 20 or 30 days and on the trail. So, running pretty good. That said, the days were long, and the weather was kind of dreary. And when I look at this video afterwards, so it took me a long time to put together the video for a couple of reasons. One is I damaged my camera on day 1 or 2, or day 1 I scratched it. Day 2 I really scratched it hard, and by day 3 I had a crack in the lens and it was unusable. So you'll see in some of the early parts of the video, there's like a fog in the middle. That's some scratches that I tried to polish out. And then so by day 3 I had no more footage from my GoPro. I was relying entirely on my phone. But then I got home, and and JT and Jeff shared their footage, and I looked at the footage, and I didn't have a lot of footage. None of us had a lot of footage. Luckily, it seemed that none of us were filming at the same time. So I was able to piece it together from people's footage. I was able to piece together a story. I mixed some video with some stills. To make the stills not so boring, you'll notice that they fade in and fade out, and there's movement to the stills. And then I drew, lines on the stills, and I put a lot of comments. So I tried to make the video interesting. But I've realized this a long time ago. When I do a long hike like this, especially if it's tiring and tedious at some moments, you don't feel like filming. You get in a sort of a zone, and you're just walking. So I'm not reminding myself to film. And then the other thing is, when you're with companions, I'd rather, at the end of the day, when we're sitting down with companions or having lunch, we're chatting, we're joking around. So I've found over the years that my videos when I'm solo are more intricate. I'm setting up cameras, taking shots and stuff like that. Whereas when I'm with a group, my filming falls by the wayside. I don't film as much, and I guess I'm just not interested. But anyways, I still had enough footage, and it took me a long time to kind of mentally decide, be ready to make the video. And then once I started making the video, there's the complication of piecing together everybody's footage, and so I hope it turned out okay. And I did want to make a video because, part of me over the years feels a little bit guilty about highlighting new areas. When I was first doing this years ago, I didn't mind talking about new areas, but then I actually realized that I've contributed with other YouTubers and the internet and the YouTube and Facebook and other things like that, and Instagram. Some areas are becoming very popular, and I feel bad about some of those areas, and so I'm kind of reluctant to talk too much about new areas. But an area like this, I deep down feel that, as many people who are logged in here who say they'll go do it next year or the year after, people won't, because it's a challenge. The crown land like this, there's no infrastructure, so there's no bridges. There's no picnic tables at the end of the day. There's no bear poles. There's no bear lockers. There's nothing like that. There's no signage. There's hardly any signs anywhere that tell you where you are. Until recently, there wasn't good maps. And then people have, I guess, there's a lacking sense of security by knowing that you're not in a national park with wardens and things like that. So there's a few reasons, I think, why people aren't going to the really wild, remote areas like this, which is fine. But for the others who are really interested in doing this, that's why I do these videos. And I encourage people, like, reach out to me if you got questions. Like, please reach out. I'll happily answer questions. You know, I relied on others to get some intel, and I return that favor. Trevor says, were you able to find much information on McDonald Creek? I had backup trip plan for that area. Trevor, yeah, you and I talked about that. That was originally our itinerary coming out of Cline Pass. We were going to head back into the Cline and then come out back into the Cline Wilderness and then come out McDonald. We didn't do it. We didn't come down that way. I talked to Zenick, the author of the map, and Zenick says that trail is just a what does he call it? He didn't do it himself. It's just it's gone. By all accounts, that McDonald Creek trail is gone. Curtis, always appreciate your willingness to engage. It's helping a lot of my trips over the years. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, you know what? We're a community. So, I mean, yeah, I feel bad about sharing too much stuff. No, I don't feel bad about sharing stuff. Let me paraphrase that. I feel bad that some of the areas that I've shared have become popular. But if it was only popularity, I wouldn't feel so bad. What I feel bad about is that some areas become popular and abused. And I've said this before. So if you're going to go into backcountry, be respectful, leave it like you found it, and please stop asking Parks Canada and other groups to go set up bridges and go set up bear poles and stuff like that. So that's the national parks, but don't keep trying to transform the backcountry into a front country experience. So going into the Cline and into the Wilmore and into the White Goat is riskier. It's different, but I want it to remain a true backcountry experience. So that's the balance that I'm trying to get at. When I share it, I don't mind sharing it, but I get upset when people go in there and then it becomes popular, and then they want that backcountry to be transformed into a front country experience. I don't want bear lockers. I'm glad when I show up at Coral Lake that there's no bear lockers. It's bad enough that we arrive there and then you hear a helicopter come and drop people a little bit further in the valley, but you know, that is what it is. Yeah, any questions, folks? Fire off some questions. Who's on here? You are an Alberta gem. Don't say things like that. I appreciate it, but there's lots of good guys that are planning for next year. Rebecca, you got any questions, Rebecca? Or Curtis, what's your trip for this year or next year? Any plans to tackle the GDT? No, I get asked that question all the time. You know, I haven't done the math, but I think I've hiked about 80% of the GDT, like one way or another. I've hiked most of the GDT. The only section of the GDT I haven't done is a little bit of section, you know, the north of section A and the south of section B. I haven't done, but I mean, I've been hiking for 35 years. And then otherwise, the idea of stretching and just doing all 700 kilometers or 800 kilometers in one day, that's I don't have anything to prove in that sense. You know, if others can do it, but that's not on my bucket list. Iceland next year with a troop of scouts. Oh, that sounds awesome. Totally awesome. What else could I tell you guys? So Joe Blake. Okay, so we went by Samson Lake, Leah Lake, Joe Blake. Joe Blake's an interesting lake. It's a very large lake inside that area. There's a cabin. There's a warden's cabin at Joe Blake. No fishing at Joe Blake whatsoever. It's used as a breeding. It provides breeding stock for fish farms and things like that. So Fish and Wildlife like to be able to go in there and harvest some fish stock. So no fishing there. We didn't fish there. We did fish on the Brazeau River, got lots of brooks and rainbows. Actually, they were mostly rainbows on the Brazeau. Beautiful wolf one night sitting on the shores of the Brazeau. and then we look across the river, and there's a little bit of movement, and then we paid attention. Big wolf, big wolf. Not sure why that wolf was alone. They're usually a pack animal. So what happens with wolves at a certain age is they get chased away from the pack, and then they go wander for a couple of years, and either they come back to that original pack and fight the alpha male to gain the leadership of that pack, or that lone wolf is sent off to go find his own little females and form his own little pack. So obviously, yeah, that was impressive. We saw his tracks on shore, huge. How did you do the route planning for this trip? So I'll answer that again. So this map by Fording River Publishing, which is the White Goat Wilderness and the Bighorn Backcountry. I did a review of this map, but let me say again. So Zenick, who made these maps. So what Zenick does, Zenick's been hiking for about a decade. And then he comes to, he did a map last year of Wilmore. Not last year, he's been doing the maps for years, but what he does is he comes and parks himself. He has a job that allows him to take the summer off. I don't know if he's a teacher or something like that. I think he's in construction, actually. And he takes the summer off, comes to Alberta, parks, by somewhere popular, and then spends days in the Wilmore, or in this case, days in the White Goat, and he explored it and mapped it all out and published this map. And on his map, I mean, considering the scale of his map, it's extremely accurate. When you get to areas where there's a couple of cliffs you'll see on day 3 when we're coming down from Red Pass, like day 3 from Red Pass coming down to Job Lake, there was some really challenging scrambles there. And on his map, he'll just show a scramble. That's where you need a bit of trail finding skills, and that, to look at the topography in front of you on site and try and figure out the best way. And we generally figured that out. So you can't put that much detail, but generally speaking, I didn't find any significant errors on his map. So we use that map. But me personally, I've also used CalTopo. CalTopo is my go-to software for planning maps. And I'm just turning around here and I'm going to show the other thing I do. I'm old school this way, but I still have an old little GPS like this, an E-Trek. And I like to plan my itineraries on CalTopo and then dump them in here and have them just as a backup. And then I also have maps on here. So it's surprising how often, we'll refer to that. And then it'll also save I'll save the itinerary. So what you'll see now on the video, there's underneath the video, not this video, but the trail video, there in the description, there is a CalTopo itinerary. And if you download it, it is this track that's been cleaned up. But if you send me an email, I'll share that information as well. I bring a phone, but I don't like relying on a phone for navigating. I like paper and an old-fashioned GPS. So that's how we plan our trips. Let me read some questions here. Enjoy the mix of stills and video clips. Thank you. Mike from PG Outdoor. Great trip, Marty. And the video worked out just fine. Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's Mike Nash, who known as PG Outdoors. PG is Prince George. Mike and I have shared emails many times back and forth. Mike is I wish I lived closer to Mike, or Mike lived closer to here, because he has been exploring parts of the world that up in BC in the Prince George area, but he comes down into our neck of the woods, into Jasper, all the time, and he's quite a bit older than me. He's probably a decade or more older than me, and still hiking out there, an incredible source of knowledge. We always joke, Mike will send me, I think Mike's a writer. He is a writer. He's published a couple of books, several books, actually, some sort of backcountry. He has a backcountry safety guide. And then he has, he shared last year, again, talking about pioneers, he did a biography on a Canadian or an Alberta pioneer in the backcountry. But anyways, to his writing background, I'm a videographer. I'm not a writing, and I always feel bad because when Mike sends me a nice long email, it's prose. It's well written and it's long. And then little old Marty, the engineer, just writes back, quick notes, but appreciate all his feedback all the time. Trevor says, a buddy and I did North Boundary Trail this summer. Thanks to your video. Wouldn't have done it without your video 10 years ago. Much appreciated. Were you looking at the recent video? Oh, I guess, yeah, my most recent video on the North Boundary is probably 10 years now, isn't it? 2015. I've done the North Boundary 3 times in my life, solo all 3 times. Actually, that was speaking of boundary. When we crossed here from across the Brazeau into the South Boundary, that was really cool. Like stepping back onto the South Boundary. I hadn't been on the South Boundary since 1995. So weird coincidence. So we crossed the Brazeau River, and then we bushwhack to go intersect the South Boundary Trail, and we find it. And we dry off a little bit, we get organized, and then we start hiking down. And I swear to God, about 4 minutes after we go down the trail, we intersect this guy. Now I can't remember the guy's name, but he was an old fellow, and we're chatting with him, and it was like weird. So he was doing the South Boundary, had started at Nigel Pass and was going to go up towards Rocky Pass and out that way. Actually, he was going to go up towards Rocky Pass and then come out and then jump back onto the Miette Trail and then come back out at Jasper. So very ambitious trail. But really cool thing is that if it had taken me, if we had delayed crossing that river by 5 minutes, we would have missed him. And if he had started his hike 5 minutes earlier that morning, we would have missed each other. So in the absolute middle of freaking nowhere, 2 parties meet. So I always think that's fascinating. And I like to think about those things. Like when you think about the cabins in those parts of the world, and the cabins used to be occupied year round, especially on the South Boundary and the North Boundary, and how people would travel and meet each other. And anyways, it's a fascinating history. What else we got for questions? Davey, when is your next solo? Probably in the next couple of weeks. Nobody wants to come hiking in winter. So, I did a November hike. Now I got to go do a quick one somewhere in December just to, I like to hike every month and maintain that consistency. But no, to be honest, folks, Marty's getting tired of hiking. I haven't been putting out as much videos. I'm tired of. I'm not tired of hiking. I am tired of hiking. My bones hurt. I'm 56 years old, and my long hikes hurt me. That's let's just put it that way. Have you ever done any trip in the Newcastle? No, I haven't done. That's why I said, like when we talk about the GDT and the bottom of the GDT, I've never. No, I haven't done the Newcastle. A friend of ours, maybe he's a mutual friend, I don't know, wants me to go there a lot, Christian. So maybe next year we'll go for a visit in there. Slack Coaster, Marty, have you ever used wet sphagnum moss as nature's wet wipes? I told my buddy, dude, when you hike long enough like I have, you use everything. You use moss, you use hate to say it, hate to be gross, you use your hand, you drop in the creek and drop your pants, do all sorts of things. So I've tried everything. Now, a lot of my hiking buddies don't like bringing just regular toilet paper as they get older. They like to bring the baby wipes, I call them. One thing I haven't tried it. I see this bit of a trend of people bringing bidets, but I'm an old-fashioned toilet paper guy. Dig a hole and bury your toilet paper. A lot of it's interesting. I've seen a lot of trends come and go over the years, and at the end of the day, there's some things that are consistent. I think the hammock trend is gone. The quilt trend's still hanging in there. There's been all sorts of, the trail runner trend is in now, the cold soaking trend, all sorts of trends. That's another thing. I finished this hike with my boots. I'm just reaching over here. Yeah. Went and bought myself a new pair of Scarpas. So I'm very much a boot kind of guy. JT and Jeff bring trail runners, and quite honestly, at the end of the day, at the end of the trip, my feet are like baby feet. They look gorgeous, and they have like blisters everywhere and tape and all sorts of stuff and injuries and micro fractures. When you're scrambling in these rocks, and I feel it. I mean, my feet are kicking rocks all the time, and all I'm thinking of is like, wow, how would that be if you kick those rocks by accident wearing shoes. So my old Scarpas, I still have my Scarpas, but after this trip I was looking at them. They've been resoled twice now, so they're on their third set of soles, and the leather's cracking, and I just don't trust them anymore for a long trip. But they're so incredible for me. And again, I've said this in many times. Footwear and shoes is so extremely personal that I would never ever be. I would never say to somebody you should run and use these shoes. That's too personal. So I have my reasons for wearing boots, and people have their reasons for wearing shoes. But I can definitely say that my boots on this trip were appreciated, and I finished with my feet in great shape. And what I do is I bring a set of little river shoes and that I use for I wear them some days when I got a lot of when we're crossing the Brazeau back, or not the Brazeau, the Coral Creek. But yeah, that's a personal thing. But I love my Scarpas. Corey, have you ever done Peter Lougheed to Elk Lake? It's pretty cool day trip. Oh yeah, no, Elk Lakes is gorgeous, and definitely go above Elk Lakes and go camp in the Patan Basin, because when I was talking if you weren't here at the beginning, when I was talking about coming down from from Gray Pass on day 2, where we had this amazing basin. The only other basin like it that I can think of is the Patan Basin above Elk Lakes. Now, getting up to the Patan Basin is a pretty steep vertical, probably a 500-meter climb, and you're going to pay for it. But the reward at the Elk Basin, at the Patan Basin, and then from the basin you can go higher up. So go explore the basin for sure. Head in the mountain. Was this a trip you were looking at doing for a while? No, it wasn't a trip I was doing. It was like I said, I left this one up to JT entirely, and JT came up with most of the itinerary. What I was hoping to do this year actually was kind of a south boundary. What I had first proposed was to go up to Catamount, go through Rocky Pass and down the south boundary to almost where we crossed, and then jump over and then come up and over Coral Pass that way. But the logistics of that one were complicated. And so JT proposed this loop. And I think this loop now is a fantastic loop. I'm calling it the super loop. I mean, I got to come up with a better name for it, but it's a fantastic loop. I think it should be a popular loop. I hope some people go and try this loop. Trust me, and there's lots of options. I mean, you could go in like we did. You can go to Coral Lake, and you can go over Gray Pass and Red Pass and come out Job and come back out, do a shorter loop. If you don't want to go to Coral Lake, you can go to the next valley over and go to Red Pass and Gray Pass. So if you look at the map, there's several itineraries in that general area. I would encourage everybody, go visit Gray Pass and go visit Red Pass. You will not regret it. There's hardly anything that I can compare in Alberta to Gray Pass and Red Pass. Like that's how spectacular they are. The video didn't do justice. Absolutely did not do justice. The falls up there are incredible. Oh yeah, the one at Patan. Well, I keep calling them Patan Falls. I don't think they're Patan Falls anymore. They're temporarily unnamed. They'll get renamed hopefully soon enough here. All right, folks. It's been 45 minutes. I appreciate it. Trust me, though, these are interesting when you're sitting there talking to, sort of like feels like you're talking to yourself. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who watched and provided comments. And yeah, Marty's still active. Marty's still making videos, but not as much as he used to. Hard to get those creative juices flowing. And like I said, I'm more interested in hiking and being in the moment with people. you know, I have friends who are engaging with me and who want to go hiking. And then I've said, actually, Stephen, who was watching earlier, is one of those people, you know, like, if you want to come hiking with Marty, reach out, send me an invitation. We'll go hiking, and don't feel like you need to challenge me or yourself, or impress me or yourself by, say, taking me somewhere I've never been. It's very hard to do. And I enjoy hiking, and I'd rather just hike with, you know, and get into the moment rather than being completely focused on making videos. Yeah, so again, I appreciate the comments I got from everybody on this one. I appreciate the comments over the years, and just wanted to share this one. This was, you know, it took me a while to make this video, but I wanted to make this video because this is a spectacular area. People are looking for challenges, want to go into areas. I hope people go into this area. Don't try to transform it into a front country experience. Appreciate it for what it is. It's a rough area, and if you have questions about this area, reach out to me, please. I'll gladly help. You know, any areas. I mean, if you want to go hike in Wilmore, if you want to go the north boundary, south boundary, whatever, you know, reach out to me, and hopefully we'll cross paths with some of you guys on the trail. I'm looking at the comments real quick. Hit the like button, folks. Thanks for sharing and engaging. All right, folks, let's leave it at that. Almost 45 minutes. I'll try and do one more in the new year. But until then, folks, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all the best. And I love everybody's comments over the years and supporting me. It's been a wonderful journey. All right. Cheers, folks.